Hey everyone, I just want to welcome you back to the Overflow podcast. I am your host, Becky Webb, and I'm here with my co hosts, Andrea Lehman and Bronwyn Deiter. And I just wanted to, invite you back into our conversation today. Today, we wanted to talk more about birth control. I know we touched on it like super briefly in some of our earlier episodes. And we wanted to bring up this topic. So, Andrea, do you want to start us off? Because I know that you have had you have some backstory with you using birth control as well. So
Sure.
let's talk about it. What's your story?
Okay. So yeah, I grew up very Western medicine. My mom was a nurse. Really didn't know anything about natural health, natural medicine, and also just didn't know to research. And I also think that it was harder to research, 20, 25 years ago. We have like so many things at our fingertips now. But anyway, so I was getting married. So I got on birth control, didn't think anything of it. And I would say probably within a month or two, I was having really severe social anxiety to where, I mean, I had never experienced social anxiety in my life, and I would be in situations with people that I knew, and my heart would just like start racing. I would not know what to say to them. I would get super nervous, and I was like, "What is going on with me?" Like it was so weird. Did not relate it to the birth control at all. Went to a couple of therapists. They were wanting to put me on like Xanax. But I knew I had a knowing that there was something else going on. Like they're trying to dive into my childhood. And I was like, no, this was way too like sudden. There wasn't any trigger, anything. Like something else is going on in my body. And so, I don't actually remember what prompted me, but I remember one day I was just like, could this be from my birth control? And at that point, I had been on birth control probably 6 to 8 months, and had been dealing with this for a good 6 months. And so I called. The first thing I did was call the pharmacist, and I said, "Is it possible that my birth control is causing anxiety?" And I remember him asking me which one it was, and I said it was Yasmin. And he looked, he's like, "No, that's not one of the side effects of that birth control." And I was like, okay. And so then I had a doctor's appointment, and same thing, asked the doctor if it could be for my birth control. And the doctor, also a male, said, "No, that's not one of the side effects of your birth control." So then this was the time of like, online chat, different chat room type things. And I found this space where it was just women who were on Yasmin. And I started reading through people's side effects, and there were so many women who were having the exact same scenario as me, where they were dealing with social anxiety. And that's all I needed. I just needed to hear like one other woman who was on this drug saying that that started after she started taking it. And I quit cold turkey. And I would say within 2 months, all of those symptoms were completely gone. Like I was back to baseline, back to normal. And I'm
I
telling you
think the
what, though,
wild thing is that they kept telling you no, it
yeah,
wasn't.
they kept telling me no. So I think about that. Like, if I wasn't the kind of person who like wanted to get to the bottom of it and just took, yeah, hey, that's an expert, it's a pharmacist, it's a doctor, and just like they're the expert, like they know. I probably would have ended up getting on Xanax, right? And then we would have had that whole cascade of negative side effects from all of the pharmaceuticals. So I'm really grateful to have found that chat room. But it definitely gave me a lot of empathy for people who are dealing with like major anxiety on a daily basis.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I've have a similar story. I don't remember which brand I was on, so I don't know, but I was taking it. Yeah, I mean, started taking it, shortly before we got married. And I took it for, I think it was maybe a year to 18 months. And I experienced the same thing. Like I all of a sudden had all this anxiety that I'd never had in my entire life. We actually applied, we were in missions at the time. And so we had applied to go overseas with this other couple that invited us to be on their team in Africa. And so, we had no kids yet or anything. And so we applied to go with them, and they would not let us go because of my anxiety was so bad. And I remember being so frustrated about it because I'm like, I've never dealt with this ever for any reason. And I was just like trying to figure out what it was. So it was kind of the same situation though. I stopped taking it, and within a couple months, like it was gone. And so ever since then, I was like, I wonder how many women are out there that have been on these, yeah, like antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs a lot of their life and never connected the dots because, yeah, no doctor would let them know, like, this is part of the side effects. But we
Right.
do know that your like birth control does disrupt your copper regulation.
Especially ceruloplasmin, right? Like it
Yeah.
can blow that up. So then you have high free copper and low usable copper, which would oftentimes the usable part isn't even tested for, but the high copper can be seen, and that's what's causing, it can cause some anxiety.
Yeah. So, like, do you want to explain more of that, Bronwyn?
Well, just there's a number of pharmaceuticals that will do that. Like I didn't take birth control, but I took different like rounds of antibiotics over time because I was not, really working on my health to like, I just kept overworking myself. So I was always getting bronchitis and just taking the drugs and keep going. But over time, that was breaking down the ceruloplasmin. So you think of ceruloplasmin like a train, and then the seats in the train hold the molecules of copper. And that train takes around the body and that loads it into like enzymes that need to be created or other functions of the body. Even moving iron is we need to have copper, available copper. So then if you take an antibiotic or birth control or some of these psychiatric medications as well, and a number of others, it's like a bomb blowing up that train. So all the copper molecules fall out of it. Now they're loose and they could be reloaded back into the train. But if you're continuously doing that, you're continually blowing up your train, and your ceruloplasmin, which is your train, is getting lower and lower. You have less available copper, but that copper is just floating around as an oxidant, irritating things. It can be irritating to, um, well, it can be irritating to a lot of tissues, but I think it is also associated with anxiety. It's also associated with fibromyalgia, that like tissue pain can be from high serum copper that's been, yeah, blown up
Well,
out of the ceruloplasmin.
and we know that with the high serum copper, the unavailable copper, that's also a correlation with high iron, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not managing the iron. And so all of those symptoms that we call like that we know is high copper are also the
Mhm.
same symptoms of high iron in our bodies. The
And
other
that,
thing I was thinking about with the ceruloplasmin, we know that one of the things that we need to make copper bioavailable and load it onto the ceruloplasmin is retinol. And I think
yes.
that's another thing that's impacted when we're taking birth control, especially like as it relates to detoxing in the liver. We're going through all of our minerals and all of our those good fat soluble vitamins when we're on something like that because our liver's needing to process more. So our body's just like inherently doing more work because there's all these synthetic, chemicals that are in the body, putting this extra pressure on us to perform. And so things get depleted and it really
Which
does
makes sense that you
cause
would
problems.
feel anxiety because then you're in this like hyper induced state, kind of, where your body's burning through its minerals. You're kind of in your, I mean, you're kind of inducing like a fight or flight that way.
Stress. That's
Yeah.
physical stress.
Stress on the body.
As if we don't have enough stress just in like our normal
Right.
lives,
Just
like, and then we add this
naturally.
on. I thought this was really interesting, guys. There was a Danish study that followed 1 million women from the ages of 15 to 34. And it was over, I can't remember exactly how many years it was, but it was over years, like maybe 7 or 8 years, these women who were on birth control. And they found that um, mood and depression were greatly impacted by being on medical birth control. So, and they found, and this was what I would love to dig in deeper to this. I'd love to know more about why this was, but they found that it was more pronounced in teenagers.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, and I think it's even higher. So they found like it was like a twofold increase over, kids who weren't on birth control. But they were only looking at people who went and had a diagnosis. I think about like you and I, Becky. Well, I don't know if our numbers would have been like just by going to a counselor. I never went on meds or anything like that for. I didn't go on anxiety meds, but so like I wouldn't have been counted in the numbers of that. So I'm sure that it's much higher, right? The impact. But
Probably
I can
because
even
I was never
remember,
formally diagnosed either, or like, yeah, would be counted any, like, never
yeah,
took.
exactly. So if it's already a twofold increase just, from those who, sought medical attention for it, I'm sure that it's much, much higher because most of us just like realize, oh, there's something going on, and then we stop doing the thing. But I was going to say when I was teaching high school, I can't tell you, because the high school girls would just, come and tell you all of the things. And I can't tell you how many girls had gotten on birth control and then suddenly mood changed, and now all of a sudden they're on anxiety meds, they're on depression meds. So,
Yeah,
You
and
know, like
I'm on these like online forums, like, the Facebook groups and stuff. And I literally, I think when we were talking about doing this episode, I was seeing
mm,
all these parents just upset about their child, having so much depression and dealing with so much as a teenager. And I'm like, how much, how much of that? I mean, we know there's all these hormone shifts, right? When with teens, but how much of that also is maybe that, yeah, putting their child on birth control or they're having those wild cycles and the doctor automatically goes to birth control and puts them on birth control. Like, and then how much of that depression comes from that?
sometimes it's just acne, not even really like
Right.
directly a hormonal, like it's not even a, it is life disrupting in the sense that acne is really social, a big social impact. But if you're already dealing with acne, you already have some social anxiety, right? That's on your face. And then if you add in the birth control, that might fix the skin just from a suppression of symptoms type of thing, not even really getting to the root of why that person has the acne. And then but you cycle into all these others. The pharmaceutical industry is certainly not motivated to clarify this because they're creating a lifelong customer. When you get on psychiatric drugs, there is not an exit door. And in fact, it's more like this fear of like, yes, but if you get off, there could be suicide
right.
in the picture, right? So it's really scary to think about. Um, and truly, once a person is on, you I have known women who have weaned themselves off, but it's a very slow process of titrating down. And we're talking about taking like 6 months to a year to titrate down. It's not a slow, like, oh, it'll be 2 weeks or 2 months even. It's very, very, very slow because you are dependent on it at that point, right? And your body does need to start making its own neurotransmitters itself to stay balanced mentally.
Well,
It's,
I
yeah.
think that's what a lot of people don't realize about pharmaceuticals is a lot of these pharmaceuticals are created to take up the receptor sites of, some of those minerals that are needed to reverse those processes. And once those receptor sites start grabbing those pharmaceuticals, your body isn't even like collecting any longer those minerals it really needs for whatever it is the body's trying to deal with. And so here we begin this cycle of, and I think pharmaceuticals can be used as band-aids as time. So I'm not at all saying like never use them, but I think it's important to remember that this is kind of the cycle that they can really propagate, that, that the body does stop making these things because it's holding on to the chemicals.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and anytime we're offered a pharmaceutical as kind of a long-term solution, we need to really, really question that and ask, like, well, what would be a way of getting to the root cause of that? For
Mm-hmm.
So
like,
I was thinking about that, Bronwyn, in terms of, so a third of teenagers who are on medicated birth control, they are on it because of either acne or menstrual cramps. So a third of them. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that the percentage of teens who are on birth control is only something like 17%. It wasn't super high. For some reason, I thought it was going to be more than that. Um, but so then you figure like 5 to 6% of the population of teenage girls are on birth control for either acne or severe menstrual cramps. So what are some things? I mean, I think that this is a good thing, right? Because I think that most of our listeners are people who are pretty well aware that there are side effects of birth control. But you may get to that point. I mean, I know I'm thinking about my parents when I was a teenager and I was dealing with acne my junior year of high school. I didn't get on birth control, but I got on Accutane, which has its whole, other set of issues with it. But I think about parents and just like seeing your kids struggle and seeing their, stress and anxiety and so, feeling self-conscious over, various things or in pain from menstrual cramps. But what would you guys do if your child was dealing, let's say, with acne? So instead of going to the pill, what are your first options?
Well, I do have a child who deals with acne, and she's now an adult, actually. She's in her early 20s. And so we've tried things over the years. Now, it's never been like the really bad cystic acne. It's been kind of the chronic thing that's come back. And it comes back monthly, but not the deep scarring kind, just the
Mhm.
really annoying and not pretty. She's learned a lot of things. So we both worked on it together. And yeah, through all these years, going on birth control hasn't been an option that I've suggested that we go pursue. So that's how detrimental I felt that would have been. Um, but yeah, it's been a journey, and she's right now in a pretty good place. What we did learn though was at our dental office we have a um, holistic dentist who a couple years ago offered to do a mouth swab for bacteria. There's like 5 bacteria that are known to be really associated with cavities, and she's also dealt with chronic cavities. And she does have good hygiene, both face and mouth. She's got good hygiene, and yet these problems going on. I was not even connecting these two issues. But when you think about it, acne right on the outside and then
Mhm.
cavities on the inside. And so when she got this mouth swab and it came back that all of them were high, I was like, oh my word, I can't believe I think that I think holistically, and I wasn't even connecting these two different things. Um, and so our mouth biome is going to be related to our gut biome. So we can't just like use more mouthwash and get rid of certain bacteria. Our gut, so we're talking about like our colon, our small intestine, there are hopefully over 100 different species of bacteria, and we want them to be in a good balance. And if we don't have them in a good balance, the ones that are negative, they're going to be circulating through the body. And literally, the gut bacteria circulate back to our ears, our nose, our mouth, even our breasts. That's why our babies get good bacteria in their milk, right? So it's like it's one whole system. And then no, then we find out, oh, she's got these negative ones in her mouth. Well, of course, that's going to be showing as inflammation. And so we began working on her gut more specifically for that and have seen changes. In fact, there's like specific bacteria that are for better skin. So you're swallowing a pill, it's going to your gut, and your skin is benefiting. But that's multifaceted. There's also things related to like, like the hygiene, like your pillowcase. Even for her, she's realized she cannot do like exfoliating during certain times of the month because her skin is regenerating or not regenerating based on her period. So has learned a whole lot, and she's kind of a little skin expert at this point. And I love that that she's becoming just like me, where she just
Maybe we
recently
need to have her on and have her tell us all these
For
things.
real. I was thinking that same thing. I love that. The dental piece is so fascinating to me. I remember listening to some podcast with a dentist who was talking about like I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but I think he was having his wife who had really good, dental, like no cavities ever, that type of thing. So like obviously the right bacteria in the mouth was having her spit in the babies, like when they have babies, spit into the baby's mouth because somehow that was then like helping the baby to like really like foster those good bacterias in their mouth.
Okay, my thought. That's super cute, Dr. Dennis, but not necessary because your wife can just breastfeed the baby and give all the good bacteria. So,
Yes, I was like, what?
God
She's
worked it
spitting in
out so
their
you don't have
mouth?
to spit in your child's mouth.
but I do have
Hilarious.
to say this. I never had cavities until I got married. My husband he had so many cavities all the growing up. And now our kids, I have had cavities since being married, and so have
You
our
were
kids.
swapping spit.
Yeah. I have been kissing my husband, so you know.
I know. I had a couple cavities growing up. I mean, I guess it's a little different that I don't, well, I guess most of mine have been since we've been married too. My husband hasn't had great teeth ever, really, either.
So
I
these
had cavities all
bacteria,
growing up.
this
Yeah.
is what's crazy. These bacteria are associated with like cardiovascular
Mhm.
disease, stillborn births. So men and women are not, I mean, are kind of in trouble if you have like this endemic thing going on. So I've been really motivated to shift the microbiomes for my family. Um, but that's not just said and done. Like it's a bit of an effort. So we've been on some protocols for swapping bacteria, but I haven't retested, so I don't really know exactly the outcomes. My daughter's face is looking better, but the jury is still out on whether this bacterial protocol is really working. But I know we're at least focused on the root cause here, right? Whether or
Right.
not we have the answer, at least we have the right diagnosis. So,
I
Does
know
she
with
still
my
go to the same
son,
dentist?
sorry, what was that?
She's still at the same dentist?
We
Like,
are, the dental practice was actually sold, and so we have a new integrative
they'll do the
dentist.
swabbing?
I don't know if he does the swabbing. I have to go back
Oh.
and ask. I think they can because they swab and send it to a lab. It's not, it's a
I'd
lab-based.
just be fascinated to know, yeah, if it's changed anything and yeah, how she's if that part's changed anything.
Yeah.
well, and I'm curious too with the, like, so, and we'll get back, let's get back to birth control, but this has been a fascinating tangent. But I just want to say, I grew up, I had so many cavities growing up. And as an adult, I've had very few cavities in the last 20 years. Um, so I'm just curious about that. Like, has the bacteria somehow shifted with me?
Well, and bacteria is not the only story, too, for teeth, right? Our
Right.
nutrition and our mineral balance, what we do with calcium and phosphorus, that has a huge
Mhm.
amount to do with our bone building. And teeth are just the bones we can see. And so if you think about it in terms of nutrition, you know,
Right, nutritionally, but I also think it's fascinating that when I stopped doing the fluoride toothpastes, I stopped getting cavities, which I don't know that that makes sense, but the timeline
yeah.
was right. Anyway, okay, so back to birth
Back to
control.
birth
Back to
control.
birth control.
Um, so okay, so a lot of kids, right? So a third of teenagers using it for controlling acne, controlling menstrual cramps. So let's talk that really quickly. So your daughter's dealing with menstrual cramps. What are your go-tos for that? And we talked a little bit about this in one of our previous episodes, but for those who maybe
Yeah, I
didn't
think
catch it.
the last one. Um, well, I talked about the Joy essential oil because
Yes.
that's just our favorite for cramping.
I,
But Becky, tell us more like in context about xenoestrogens and when to bring in that, like when to bring in something like joy, but then what does the baseline lifestyle look like for avoiding cramps?
So yeah, I mean that's the thing. Those xenoestrogens using. So we know like going to back to teenagers, and I don't know if we talked about this in the last episode, but it's like a lot of them like all those those sprays, the Bath and Body Works, the smelly lotions and all those things, and like those do all contain those xenoestrogens. So we have this dysregulation of hormones happening. And then you are going to usually see more menstrual cramps like that. Maybe the bleeding gets worse. Maybe the PMS gets worse. The moods get worse. It's harder because all those things are, again, taking up those receptor sites that are designed for, the hormones that your body's making, or, dysregulating the minerals, or, all those like disrupting those processes. And so that's why we really do need to think about like cleaning up even those things that we put on our skin. And we know that like with teens, like this is really rampant too, because the teens love those things.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, sometimes that's real hard. That's why I tried to even teach my kids that as they were
Mhm.
younger. And we all kind of have to really take a look at what's in your products so that and because if you don't look at them, yeah, you're likely getting things that are disrupting your hormones just from the things that you put on. It could be even just from the things you put on your skin.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that really starts there is cleaning up those things to
Mhm.
decrease those cramping and decrease those bad cycles because, I mean, that stuff definitely doesn't help any.
Mhm.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I know in my both my girls, they like to experiment with a little bit of that fun stuff too. And my 14-year-old thinks it's fun to go to Sephora. And I'm like, is there anything in this store that is even worth touching?
I know. I
Um,
can't stand going to
but
Sephora.
yeah,
My
I
favorite
my
place.
parenting style is I want them to come to those decisions because I know that the day is coming when they will not live in my home and they will make those decisions. So I want them equipped to make those good decisions for life. So I give them a little bit of, like what is the saying, enough rope to hang yourself. I don't buy any products that are not clean, and I supply them. I give them the shampoo, the hairspray, all the stuff that they need, and beautiful fragrances from like Wild Notes, but they'll occasionally take something and try it, and then I'll tell them that they stink because I personally feel like it stinks so
And
bad.
their
It
friends will
smells
give them a
awful.
gift. Like
Yes,
my
but then
daughter has so many gifts. Like thankfully she's like that. I'm like that too. Like I have the same parenting style too, because I don't want to be like, you can't do this, and then them go out and do it or whatever. So, but she like researches everything, thankfully, and has this little regifting box. Like her friends give her stuff all the time, even. Like she doesn't even buy it.
no, I
Yeah,
know.
that's the thing from the friends. I feel like all of her stuff that
Because
has
what else do you
coffee
give a
from friends.
teenager for their birthday?
Right.
A
I know.
teenage girl, all the
I know it
smelly
is the
things.
thing. It is the thing to do for sure.
You know what? Young Living just came out with that holiday. It's just like a very temporary thing, but they have the holiday little collection of hand lotions that have those beautiful, fun fragrances. I would like to see more of that. That's like small, giftable sizes, giftable pricing. Because they're like a set of three, but we just even break them up, But those kinds of things, I like all the companies need to do clean products that teens can gift because they do like the fun
Mhm.
fragrances, and you can get them cleanly from essential oils. But anyway, so when I also have my girls come to me and say, I'm having cramps, and yes, I did use XYZ, whatever perfume, like they connect it. They know that they created this situation because they don't always have cramps. Sometimes they're just, it's all great, and then they go dirty and, see the consequences. So I like that they actually are connecting the two.
So
That's
whatever, I mean, I think whatever we can do and help our kids do to support um, their livers, like to, process things well, because especially during that time, right, when they're teenagers, there's so much going on hormonally, and their body's having to process so much. So really, I think focusing there. I know with my son, obviously he wasn't dealing with cramps, but he was dealing with acne at age 14, I would say. And so thankfully, he started becoming more aware on his own without our influence of like what foods we're doing. Like he notices when he has foods that have like seed oils in them that he breaks out. So he really on his own tries to avoid as much as he can in that way. But we were just doing what we could to support his liver. So supplement wise, we were doing he was taking Juvatone. He was doing sulfurzyme. That's helpful for phase two detox. I think he was also doing super C chewables and he was doing probiotics. So those four things in combination with him cleaning up his diet some, I feel like had a huge impact over that year of reducing the amount of acne and just like redness and stuff in his skin. So I know it can be multiple things, but I think the biggest thing is like we want to do what we can as parents to treat the root cause and figure out what's going on, what's causing this, as opposed to covering it up. The birth control is just, reducing the sebum. It's not getting at like what is actually, causing this issue. Um, okay, really, really quick. I don't know if you guys know this, but I was doing a little bit of research into the history of birth control, like the beginnings of it, and was kind of appalled. So apparently, they started testing birth control on women in Puerto Rico, namely because well, they found like communities of poor women who were less likely to like challenge the doctors and things like that. And they were doing higher doses than what are given to women today. And so in the course of the study, obviously there were lots of side effects. These women thought they were just like stopping pregnancy. Like they didn't know that there were any potential side effects with this. 3 women died during the study. Um, and then obviously just lots of side effects because it was a much higher dose than what is even used today. So I just thought that was super sad that that's how we got our birth control, was just testing on these unassuming women who had no idea that they were part of an experiment in
Yeah,
Puerto
I
Rico.
think
So
that
yay.
happens more than we realize.
Eh,
Mm,
yeah, we could get into that.
yeah.
Well, I want us to talk a little bit about, we've talked kind of like answers for teens because they're getting on birth control for non-birth control reasons. But I think we should talk about what are options and even like what's mindset that some women maybe who are about to get married are truly wanting to use birth control for birth control. What would be something that they maybe haven't thought about or been told by their doctor, like not full disclosure on all this? One thing that I know is like it's usually listed as this is going to control ovulation, so there's not going to be a conception, but it truly can just make the womb hostile so that there's not that lining that's been developed and grown, and so there could be a conception that doesn't implant. And so, that's a moral issue to face. Like, are you just making a womb that's not hospitable? I have two friends specifically who were on birth control and then like missed a dose or kind of like were away for a few days. And that's when they conceived their oldest child, right?
Mm.
And so I know these children, like they've told me like, I went to my doctor and the one went to her doctor and he said, oh, if you just doubled up the dose the next day, it would have taken care of that. And she was like, that
Mm,
is my son.
mm,
Yeah.
hmm.
And so I'm thinking about how we can, so like something we don't see, it's not like visible to us, and yet we're kind of wheeling and dealing with these chemicals, which we're talking about life and death here. And so, for the person who is, um, yeah, considering that, like, what is really going on, and what are you participating in to do that and choose that as your birth control, and also realizing like the impact happens in your own body too. So for the woman that's been on birth control and is having her copper damaged, so say a woman thinks like, okay, I'm going to do birth control, for our first year of marriage and then we'll start our family after that, but you've had your copper damaged during that time, right? And then you go into, say, then you like stop, like ideal would be stop and like 2 months later get pregnant, and then you're having your baby, like 2 years into marriage, it's all going on plan, but you're going into that pregnancy in a bit of copper chaos, and
Right.
yet pregnancy is a huge copper event in the body
Well, how
because
much is it again that mom downloads to her baby?
a
Of
It's
course.
full
like
human,
30.
I think it's 80 milligrams. So it's like what we as full-sized adults have in our body, that same amount we would download to our baby. So during that pregnancy, you need to like absorb, catalyze, and download to the baby. And it's mostly in the third trimester,
Yes.
which is why preemie babies tend to have copper issues because they didn't get the benefit of all 3 months of copper download. Another tangent, but
Yeah.
mom going into that, you want to make sure your copper is ideal. And then moms who are dealing with anemia in pregnancy, again, a copper issue. And so
Because
before,
copper really does fuel energy. I mean, I think people don't realize how significant copper is to our energetic cycle. And so when we're saying these words, like when we're saying copper, it's like, oh, I think we can pass it off as like, it's just one mineral. We need all these other minerals, but this is like what we need for our energy.
Mhm.
It's hugely important. It's hugely important. It'd be like getting a toy for Christmas that required a battery and not putting the battery in it.
Right.
And like how much enjoyment is your child going to have with the toy that doesn't have the battery in it?
And literally, your battery is a copper top. Like the battery,
Yes.
like a lithium
Yes.
battery
Like
is not made without copper. And if you've ever done like the science experiment where you have the two glasses of water and you do the wire and the metal and you make the light bulb go on, one of those plates is copper because you have to have that to make the energy.
well,
And
and they're
that's the
using
thing,
this
it
now in
totally
gardening too.
translates.
What's that?
I was just saying it just translates. Like it,
Yeah.
yes, we can do that outside the body, and that's what the body needs inside the body.
Yes.
What were you saying, Andrea?
Oh, I was just saying how they're like using it in horticulture now, like in gardening and stuff, like the copper wire like into the garden and how
Oh
it's
yeah.
improving like the growth of plants and stuff. So it is fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
moving electrons, like literally energy in the body. So yes, so the woman going into like thinking that she will be planning a family, within a couple years, that's I'll get again the worst time to ever go on a medication like chemical birth control because you're not setting yourself up nutritionally to have a excellent pregnancy and the best give your baby the best health possible while retaining your own health because I think in pregnancy our bodies will prioritize our baby and that's like a beautiful pick like that's just a beautiful thing, right? Like our body will give everything to baby but also leave us in a deficit if need be. So we want to feed ourselves really well. The best way to get our copper, I mean, eat full fruits and vegetables and meats and like a full good diet. Definitely get our saturated fats from grass-fed sources because they have the retinol in there. So the grass-fed butter, grass-fed eggs. But if you want a supplement that's going to be like the powerhouse or replete what you have in deficit, beef liver. Beef liver is the one. Most of us don't like to eat it as a food. So encapsulated is how I take it. My girls take that. I feel like it's the best thing for me to do. It's the best supplement. If I couldn't give them any other supplements, I would still give them beef liver, so that however many years from now that they are moms, that they are like have the nutrition to build that baby well and to keep themselves healthy well during pregnancy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really like nature's multivitamin, you know.
Yes.
I agree with you. If you're only going to take like one supplement, if you're looking for like a multivitamin that's going to cover a lot of things, it's a really good one to go to. And it is for those of us who are not fans of liver. It's a really easy way, maybe not as great as having fresh liver, but at least you're getting a lot of the benefits from taking the desiccated liver. I will say this about liver that I can do it if it's mixed with ground beef. So if you can find a good source of like liver and ground beef together, we'll use that for like with pasta.
Oh
Do that mix.
Oh
And
yeah.
that works really
That's
well.
yeah.
that'll
Sauce.
work. I had this friend that she would like chop up liver, freeze it, and just take it like swallow it like a pill like that.
Can I tell you this? Can I
I don't
share
do
this story
that.
really quickly? Quick tangent here. So I decided I was going to do that, right? Because I do not like the taste of liver. I am not a picky eater. Like I can eat most anything, but blue cheese and liver are like my two things that I'm like, nope, it's a no. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try it. We have really good sourcing for liver. We actually have grass finished beef and all of the things delivered to our house weekly, and people come and pick up from us. It's really fun to just kind of provide that service for our community. So anyway, they have liver. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna order a liver. I'm gonna freeze it. I'm gonna cut it up, and I'm gonna take it like capsules. And so I start like cutting the liver, and I'm just feeling like sick like not right, like visceral response. I'm like, this is not good. So I like 5 times, you guys, I go to sit down on the couch and take a break because I'm feeling like I'm going to pass out from cutting up this liver.
Oh
Come
no.
back, do it again. Same thing. So my son Grant comes in and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I need you because he's like my guy. Like if a chicken has to be killed or something, like I am like, Grant, you go do the thing that I don't want to do. So it's like, I really need you to cut up this liver. Like it's making me feel sick. And he's mocking me, right? Well, he goes to start doing it and he's like, Mom, I'm not
You got
feeling
sick
well
too?
either. So I don't know what it was about cutting up this liver, but like it was this weird visceral response where both of us, it was making us feel like we were going to pass out. I don't know what that is, but anyway, it was
You
there.
know, so several years ago, I had a girl come in and do like meal preps for me. She'd like chop our veggies, make a pot of soup for the week. And I assigned her to chop liver one day, not knowing how, like, I know it stinks, right? But like, she's totally fine cutting up a chicken or whatever. Like, I wasn't being mean to her, really. Like, I'm not mean. But she had the same response. Like, after an hour, she comes, she's like, I'm feeling so sick. I have to go home. And I was just like, Kadra, I'm so sorry. Like, but you're right. I think it's so intense. It's actually, a poison is the dose, right?
Right.
Ate a whole liver,
Right.
that would be enough. That's poison.
It's a
And this
lot.
so much
Yeah.
iron, so much copper, so much retinol, so much of these things we actually need, but too much of it. And it's actually in very bioavailable forms. So I think
Mhm.
touching and smelling our bodies is like, please do not make me eat this entire thing.
Yeah. You're prepping this whole thing for me to eat? No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But little
wild.
Interesting.
bits, little bits. I
Hmm.
mean, that tells you how intense and how potent it is. We don't want to take supplements that are nothing. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's wild. That's totally wild. We get our milk, our raw milk from a regenerative farm, and there's a slight like blue tint to it. And copper, it has like a blue color.
Yes.
So I'm like we have done liver off and on in the past. At the moment, I don't know. I guess nobody's really been taking liver supplements at the moment. But I look at that raw milk and I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're getting some good copper
I've
from that.
never thought about that. So it's like
Yeah.
okay, the milk, the raw milk, the cream will all rise to the top, right? So that's like golden and thick at the top. And then below, it's like the more watery and white, but bluish
Mm-hmm.
until you mix it up. And then it's like creamy white again.
Yeah.
But I never thought of it as having copper in it.
I mean, well, cream is so good for the retinol primarily, right? It's the
Right.
retinol and the cream because cream is great for you also. That raw cream. And of course, like raw milk has all those really fantastic enzymes that also help with so much. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. That was just my assumption is that like the blue tint to it might be
Mhm. Yeah,
copper.
I wonder what else it could be. That's interesting. I haven't noticed with it because we get raw milk too, and I have not noticed a blue tint on ours at all. But I do love, like, I won't shake it, when we get it, like I let all that cream just kind of sit there and then I like use it for my coffee before
Yeah.
everybody starts.
And it's just like a very faint blue tint. It's not like, the milk's blue or anything, but you just kind of see this little faint
Not
Yeah.
like yak. Is it yak milk that's blue or is it pink or
camels. Camel milk might be a little blue. Camel milk's very high in copper.
oh, okay.
I have never done, so you've done camel's milk.
Yeah, so there's a farm, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's a farm in Colorado that when my son was really sick, I don't know if I've talked about that on here yet or not. I can't remember. But when my son was really sick, I was getting camel's milk because he was dealing with adrenal issues and I knew about how amazing, he was low. I know he was low in copper and actually one of the first tests I had done after he had gotten sick, the practitioner I used, she was like, "Oh yeah, I can tell that you had birth control when you can like shortly before you conceived him," which is I don't know, interesting.
Huh.
But so we were trying to, work on his body and all this stuff. And I found out that, yeah, camel's milk was just like so nutrient dense. And with the enzymes and the minerals, it's very nutrient dense. Um, so I did start buying some from a farm in Colorado for a little while. It also
Wow.
was very expensive, but I was like ready to do anything for my son. So yeah, it was, and you don't have to take
Interesting.
much. You have to take like an ounce at a time or two or something.
I've heard about it a lot in like more holistic circles with like autism, like vaccine related, autism, um, for just like the gut healing and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing for
Mhm.
gut healing. It's amazing for nutrient density and minerals. So good.
Hmm. Interesting.
Becky, can we circle back to your comment about the practitioner who said that she suspected or knew that you had done birth control before he was conceived? Like, how
Mhm.
did you deal with that personally? That feels like, I mean, I think as moms we deal with so much guilt because we
Yeah.
want to do everything well for our kids and it hurts us so much when they're not having a, you know, everything perfect for them. How did you feel about that? How did you deal with that? And what would you have to say to moms who might be listening to this podcast and feeling some of those same feelings?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I've dealt with a lot of mom guilt over the years about all kinds of things, everything from, yeah, my son's diagnosis and that practitioner saying that to me, which on one hand, I was glad I had the information. On the other hand, yeah, I mean, there's a guilt associated with it for sure. To like my youngest child, when she was 4 months old, she was born with the sutures closed in her skull. She had to have a surgery at 4 months to open up, and it's a structural thing. There was no other options for that. And I had a lot of mom guilt about that. So for me, I mean, one part of it's just been working on a lot of healing myself personally over the years. I feel like where the and then at the time, like I mentioned, like the camel's milk wasn't cheap, but I was like ready to do whatever it took to kind of restore his body. So I think there was just over the years been a process of both. Like some of it I still deal with off and on. Some of it I'm still like sorting through. I think one thing we have to remember is that like we do the best we can with what we know, and we have to forgive ourselves. And so a lot of the
100%.
process of healing for me has been forgiving myself for things I didn't do intentionally, like I didn't know. And so I think sometimes, all this knowledge can come with guilt. But at the same time, it's like, but if we know better, we can do better. I mean, it was the same, like when we found out my son was sick, like I had to put him on steroids for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to, like, that was keeping him alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful that I know what I know now, and I've been able to work to restore his body so that he doesn't have to use those steroids anymore. Because I know a whole lot of people that are still on them, and they don't seem like they're getting better. Like they seem to have a lot more bad days than good.
Mm-hmm.
And my son, I mean, last year he was, playing football in the heat. Like he had teammates that have, as far as I know, never had any health issues, and they were cramping and puking, and and he was fine. And
Mm-hmm.
so on that level, like just yeah, a lot of forgiveness for me, a lot of just trying to appreciate the journey in some ways, which isn't always easy either. But also just yeah, taking what I know and saying we're just gonna move forward with this. I mean, some of it's been very, I don't know, forgiving in some ways because I'm just so happy with his how he is doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. I think
Sure.
that's really important for us all to hear. And because really, we all have things we can think of, like what I did or didn't do before I had kids, or when I had kids, or what things I gave them, or yeah. And then we learn more and we do better. And then we also have these regrets, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And like you said, the journey, I think trusting the journey, but that's really trusting in the Lord, trusting in God who
Yeah.
directs our journey, and then that extends to our kids. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, God he's writing their story, and it's not all going to be rainbows and butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Part of their stories are going to be some trial too, because he's more after our hearts and having us know him and see our need. And also, we just live in this broken world. We live in a broken world that's affected by sin, and so we don't live in bodies that are going to live forever as they are, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're
I
affected
think
by
we just always need to be careful about that downward spiral of guilt.
yeah.
And we need to remember that, like, yeah, all of us moms deal with it on some level,
Mhm.
not alone.
Mhm.
Like, you need to also practice forgiveness for yourself and just know, yeah, that God's always supplying the pieces to the puzzle that we didn't always, we don't have. We don't know everything. We're not all knowing. And so, like, we need to give ourselves a lot of grace on that level.
A
And each
lot of
other
grace.
too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah, sometimes I would wonder, like, why would someone do, oh, they just were right where I was a few years ago or last week or whatever, right? Like, we can always be, yeah, we can be learning more, but giving grace to each other.
Yeah, I think so. So, well, maybe on that note, we should wrap it up for the today. And I just want to thank everybody once again for joining us to our Overflow podcast. And we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.